maybe this is a bit of a loaded question here, but I'll ask it anyway.
Go for it. I don't mind those. Those are fun.
You know, an issue that we had growing up, or when our kids were growing up, was always dealing with what music they could listen to and what music they needed to avoid. And so, you know, this is not applicable just for teenagers, but as adults, how do you think the music that we listen to outside of church impacts our worship experience individually, and then when we get back together in church? And how big a role should secular music play in our individual Christian walks, or should it not? What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's certainly a difficult topic, and one that I've probed often as well. I mean, having 4 children who, just like Hannah and you, have varying different music styles. So what is that dividing line of what I consider appropriate and what I consider inappropriate? I think one dividing line that I would think about is the worldview and the life experience this writer, this, whether it's pop or secular, whatever we want to call it, is this worldview at least match up okay with my Christian worldview? Or is it teaching and imprinting something completely foreign to what I would believe and trust? Now, I think secular music has a place. I mean, I think it's important for us to read books by authors who aren't followers of Christ, right? I think it's important for us to behold works of art because we need to learn about our wider culture as we minister to that culture. Secondly, I think that there is an age affects those things. So I try to think, okay, at age 6, what would I allow my daughter to listen to? Versus at age 18 when they're in college, right? There's a big difference because I want, and it's often like I even raise them, you know, I want to have their influences much more Christ-centered and really building a rich foundation in their younger years. And as they get older, to expand that umbrella a bit so they're encountering outside viewpoints and communicating, because at some point they're going to. So what is that balance and that methodical way of introducing folks to the outside? I think your larger question, even beyond my own family, is, you know, the relationship between outside secular music and how it affects our worship. And I think number one is just to recognize that everything we listen to musically has an ability to shape us. And that's a tough thing, but it's just true. It affects our intellects and our minds and our emotions and our memories. And these words that we're hearing are still being, in some sense, planted on our hearts. So we must be very careful about what we're listening to. And I think on another side of things that obviously those styles still influence. So as a worship leader, how do I balance making that whole in the world but not of the world equation? And it's like that pendulum, that tension, right? I want music that is familiar, that is folk, that is popular in the sense that my people can engage with it. Right. But I don't want my church driven by only secular outside influence world too. So again, great question. I think it'd be a good thesis topic to really dive into, you know.
Well, I think you hit on something that's very important. And I know as we were raising our children, it's something that we tried to do and it really, really influenced our decision to homeschool them, was controlling their exposure to age appropriate material. Right. Because I really believe when kids are very young, 4, 5, 6 years old, their minds are simply not ready to be exposed to some things. Right. So what we tried to do was lay that foundation and expose them to things in a gradual way and when they were ready for it. And so I totally agree with what you said, and it's how we raised the kids, is that we did not shelter them until they were 18 and then just turn them loose in the world. But we introduced those things and let them have those experiences in a more controlled way after they had a little bit better foundation under them so that they could make better interpretation decisions themselves. And then we had conversations regularly about it, right? Which is the key. Because, and again, maybe I'd like to hear from Hannah on this, but when she was 12 or 13 listening to music, if she wanted to listen to Taylor Swift or whoever the person at the time was, we would have conversations about, what is she singing about? How does that impact how we should live? How does that play in with our belief in God and how we should live our life? And so having the conversation and keeping that conversation going, I think, is so key, because if your kids get off in a corner and they never hear from you on that, then I think that's a bad position. And what I have seen is that parents oftentimes are hesitant to have those difficult conversations, maybe because they think they don't have the right answer, or maybe they're not sure. And, that's one thing with our kids, parents don't have all the answers. And I think kids need to know that. Right. And you need to have a conversation just like we're having right now about, well, that's a tough question. Let's explore the answer. And so I don't know, Hannah, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, you're most recent to come through the teenage years.
The way we were raised, even though my parents were not hyper conservative, we were around some very hyper conservative circles. And I remember distinctly a church that we went to for a while. There was kind of this event where one of the men in the church did this big talk about why secular music was bad, how, in hip hop, the drum beats, those are like, literally, he said, ancient, like paganistic, sexually driven, like we don't need to listen to that. It's dangerous for your soul. And he challenged us, for a month, only listen to Christian music. And I didn't do the challenge, but
we're going to give you a pass on that. Since you're a teenager, we'll give you a pass.
Good choice, Anna.
But, at the same time, I feel like there's that tendency to, when it comes to the secular world, kind of for the church to build in a sort of fear or guilt about us engaging in secular music. But my exposure to secular music really shaped my musical taste, shaped me as a musician, and was really beneficial for me. And I think if we believe that God is the source of all beauty, why can he not make a secular song beautiful? He has, well, I'm not sure what the theological term is, but kind of that common grace that he gives to all is also with those who are unsaved. And so I believe we can benefit from secular music and also benefit from Christian music. I believe we should listen to both. But I think I would have really missed out on a lot of joy if I had been shut off from that secular musical influence. So.
And I heard some of those same, viewpoints at different points in my life, and of course my kids have watched the videos and probably not agreed with them, on those things too. I think even we have to, analyze, and we can go too far with this, but analyze our construct between sacred and secular, right? Our whole point is that the sacred is to integrate with everything, that the sacred is all of our life as Christ is present with us. So I think the terminology can be helpful, but the recognition is too that all truth is God's truth, right? That through God's common grace, a pop artist can probe a topic like human love or confession in ways that are very beneficial for a follower of Christ. That maybe captures that idea better than a Christian artist trying to capture it poorly. So I think they're seeing, and I think even the beauty of music for music's sake. I mean, think about classical music, and much of that wasn't written specifically to be worshipful Christian music, but yet it still is very revealing of God's majesty and his grace and complexity and all those things too. So I think we're really limiting ourselves, and it's interesting to me too that why in the world would we make this division of music but nothing else? I mean, These people would not say you don't talk to a person who isn't a follower of Christ. They wouldn't say you don't read the newspaper, which is secular. They wouldn't say you don't read a book. But music, because it's so powerful, I guess, they create these false walls. So I think be very careful against that hyper-conservative movement there away from engaging with culture in general.